You can't ask for a better panel of speakers speaking on freighters. And I would like, instead of me talking about it, I would like to ask questions to each one of them, and then we kickstart the very interactive discussion. We have seen in the early part of 2025 a significant shift in the way global trade because of the tariff, because of the dip in the cross-border e-commerce cargo. We have seen also the repositioning of the main deck capacity in the later part of 2024 because the demand on the Transpacific was really huge. So everyone wants to take the opportunity to really take advantage of that piece of business. But that seems to have changed in the last 5 to 6 months. But then that keep changing depending upon the trade policies and what is being initiated by the global political leaders. Let me start with Yanni. Um, Given the constantly evolving global trade, largely driven by the tariff, how do you interpret these changes? And how is your freighter network adapting, and what challenges do you see?
Yeah, thanks, Reji. Tariff changes, regulation changes is nothing new to us. I think the only observation we have now is just much more volatile versus in the past. So if you look over traditionally, if new compliances kicks in and new filings kicks in, we have 90, 60 days to adapt. Now it's just more erratic. And from us, from MSC Cargo, we've always aimed to have as agile and flexible capability where we use a multiple hub system rather than a gateway system versus a hub infrastructure. So it will continue. I mean, we will get more changes in the future and trade will shift. I mean, the commodity base is always just depends on what's the fashion at that time.
Just a follow-up question in terms of how are you aligning the expectations with your key customers, because these are rapidly evolving market conditions, and you need to have a very agile and flexible reading of the market and then probably find solutions with your customers.
Yeah, I mean, we are very much, a freight forwarder carrier, and we diversify amongst all our freight forwarding customers, and we make sure we have a portfolio that's not as dependent on the main drivers. So we very much focus on the high tech. We have very much focus on pharma and specialized solutions. So yes, e-commerce is a driver and everybody's consolidations today, but diversification and across your customer base is key to be flexible.
Nadeem, what is your reading of the current market condition, and how are you aligning the expectations, and then how are you aligning your relationship with your key customers in a rapidly changing global trade and global environment?
I think aligning expectations is really difficult, as we've seen over the last few months. Every day, new challenges, new policy changes, etc. I think the only thing that has intensified is the communication with your customers. That's a lot more frequent, almost daily. Schedules are having to be adapted regularly. So the volatility has just increased. But as Yanni said, one way or the other, these kind of surprises have always come around, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's something else. And that's something that we as an industry, are quite good at adapting to. But yeah, it's what's going to come, nobody knows. I think many corporate airlines have CNN these days in their offices on 24/7. When somebody else was the policy, we turn around and look at CNN and see what the latest policy when it comes to tariff and other trade embargoes, etc. So volatility is going to be keen, but I think over the last few months, as an industry, we've demonstrated that while it's volatile, we're equally very agile, and flow and trade flow will not stop because of our inability to react. I think we're quite adaptable.
Does the pandemic actually prepare you for something like this? Because that was a global healthcare pandemic, but this is a different type of a challenge. Did that prepare you to do something like this?
Yeah, I think let's say the element of surprise is a lot smaller. Okay. Again, of course, Corona and that period is, I wouldn't say nothing comparable to this. That's about saving lives and a whole different dynamic. But this of course, a lot of operational challenges. And I think, this is where really, again, the freighters have come into a spotlight. I would call it kind of the insurance policy or the joker card for the air cargo industry, that if everything does go south, we've got the freighters that we can redeploy very quickly to adapt, which of course is more of a challenge when you're trying to adapt passenger belly capacity. So those 7-8% of global wide-body freighters that carry more than half of our global air cargo volumes, they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think the importance of the freighters has just been amplified over the last few months.
Michael, how do you evaluate, how do you assess the current state of air freight industry, and how often do you get on a call with some of your airline partners?
We just met yesterday talking exactly this topic. Yeah, so at the end of the day, for us, it's also, as also Yanni said, essential. We establish our own network and also a global gateway model where we really can play with the gateways and react very flexible and dynamic, because you need to stay agile as all the disruptions which are picking up on a monthly base. We really need to be very dynamic and act, and especially customers, they still have the expectation, there's still a demand to find a solution for their cargo. So that is the reason that we really try to be as flexible as possible in cooperation also with our global partners. So at the end of the day, it's just able to work together. And in current stages, it's also essential to have a very close update in regards of schedule changes, forecasting. We try to be also close to our customers to get as good as possible an outlook, but sometimes also this is not given, and therefore, yeah.
Okay, let me now turn to the plane makers. Oliver, what are your observations of the current global air freight market, and what are some of the key factors that you think will impact manufacturers like Airbus?
So from our point of view, it's all about supply and demand. If there is more demand, there will be more requests for buying freighter airplanes. One item here is very clear. E-commerce has been driving freight demand over the past years. And the big question out there is what's going to happen to it. We have on the one side, we have tariffs, 150%, but on e-commerce items of $2.15, that's not much of an impact. What we are more looking for is what's going to be the change to the de minimis rule and the European equivalent. And here specifically, if there is a flat fee introduced per transaction, which has been in the press rumored about $50, $100, growing to $200, whatever. If a $2.75 item is slapped with a $100 flat fee, that will have an impact because people will not buy that anymore. And then we have to see how this evolves, because that could have a significant dampening effect on e-commerce, and with that on air freight demand.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I think the words I've heard most the last couple of weeks is uncertainty and flexibility. And as Nadim said, we have main deck freighters out there that are the most flexible trade tools in the world. So we've seen really the value of the main deck freighters being able to carry the critical cargo. Yes, e-commerce has driven a lot of growth, but we have the core part of the business with the general cargo, the commodities that are super important globally, the pharmaceuticals, the foods, the perishables, and that stuff will continue, right? So when we look at the market now, it's really not looking at it now. It's looking over the next 20 years. And when we think about the fundamentals that drive our 20-year forecasts, industrialization, production, industrial growth, GDP, trade, we think long-term those are really solid, and those will continue to drive, 4% growth in the industry over the next 20 years. So we've been in the long game with air cargo, at Boeing, and we see no change to that. We're very committed to the market.
Okay. Yanni, I don't know how much of cross-border e-commerce cargo is carried on MSC cargo freighters, but cross-border e-commerce shipment, especially the de minimis direct-to-consumer parcels, have been a major driver for transpacific main deck cargo volumes. Can you provide some insights into the impact these shipments have experienced in the last March, April, and early May?
Yeah, no, for sure. It was quite very dominant last year and in the start of this year. But as we've seen across a lot of the forwarders and shipping direct with some of the carriers, it had a significant impact because of the pure volume. I mean, the e-commerce is a go-to-market strategy by time definite. That's the end of the game. So it's clear that the Chinese providers would like to beat Amazon in the US. I mean, that's their ultimate game. But at the end of the day, it's like water to the ocean. It will find its way. Indication with the de minimis, there will be some changes, maybe not as harsh as what's being put out there, because it needs to resettle and balance to some degree. I think also some of the bigger shippers has adapted the procurement strategy as well of just not buying and buying, but now planning a bit more. And I think we've all seen a bit of a shift in that, how that goes. But as you know, we are with the forwarders, we do see a bit of the change in their consolidation of how they shifted. But yet still it remains towards, a core component to the heavy air freight side of the business. It will maybe just rebalance a little bit back to not as high demand.
Nadeem, for Emirates Sky Cargo, what does the data show for the last 4 months in terms of de minimis direct-to-consumer parcels, and what kind of impact have you seen on some of those key trade lanes?
So I think we're not directly exposed, and I'm saying that because the biggest impact, of course, has been on the volumes from China and the Far East into North America. We are less exposed on that. However, the secondary impact of that is that the drop of volumes have led to redeployment of capacity more from Asia to Europe, and that has led to some challenges. But again, if we look at data year on year, e-commerce, in the month of May, the volumes were still higher than what they were last year, especially on Asia, Europe, and that's where the growth is. And we're speaking to some of the e-commerce players as well, is that whilst North America has become a bit more of a challenge in the short term, they're refocusing their efforts by spending more on advertising, etc., in other markets like Europe, like South America, and we see volumes going up. I think in the short term, it has some challenges, especially again North American destinations, but overall e-commerce is still very robust, and I think in the coming years, we still expect that there will still be a sizable driver within air freight. It will, maybe assess some of the SOPs and expectations, etc. But it's a way of life, and we're used to that way of life. And I don't think any of us are necessarily going to change that way of life. And to Yanni's point, and also to Oliver's, those, whether it's going to be €2 per parcel, €100 per parcel, those things will have an impact. But again, considering the global climate, I don't think any large economy is posting double-digit GDP growth. So I don't think policymakers and politicians would want to drive inflation and all those kind of things at this moment. So, you would expect some sort of policies to come in to I guess, levy some charge. But we don't expect that would be as significant, that would really have a major impact on the future of e-commerce. And we hear that, for instance, now with the 30%, into the US now, that is already pushing volumes up again from the Far East into North America. And I think now everybody's waiting mid of August, see what the permanent rule, so to speak, is going to be, and that's going to set the future. But as far as we are concerned at Emirates, Sky Cargo believes that e-commerce will remain an integral part of air cargo. It's not going to go away.
So, Reji, if I can just flip back, it's like when cell phones came out, when Nokia was the big driver and then the shift. And today, everybody knows the Apple volumes, everybody knows when it comes out. So it kind of balances back into the normal, what you said, the demand. So in the beginning, it was charters back to back to back to back. And then then laptops came as a high demand. So you get all these influx of what I call fashion products that goes extremely high, and then it settles back into the trade. So I think e-commerce will follow a similar pattern.
Michael, what's the kind of data and insight that you are gathering from your network, a global network that you have in terms of cross-border e-commerce cargo?
First of all, our e-commerce shares also is single digits, so it doesn't really have a major impact on our network itself. But for sure, we also recognize the uncertainty now, and that the decline has forced, as Nadim said, that freighters are now rerouted, flying more from Asia to Europe, or even there are new deployments from Europe to North America, which is going now in the market. So at the end of the day, for us, it does not have a dramatic impact, but in general, we see that there's this huge uncertainty, and as Yanni also said, the industry, the supplier will get back. They find a new way, a new solution, and the platform, they might reshuffle into other countries or something like that. Anyway, we're living in this industry with e-commerce, and I guess they will also resist in the next couple of years. Yeah.
We've seen it that there is a pause for the trade tariffs for 90 days. Question to all three of you is, do you see volume coming in as part of front loading?
I think at the moment it's too early. At the moment, no. But if we look at the previous deadlines, for instance, the 12th of May deadline, give you a very specific example. For instance, there was rumors around potentially tariffs for Indian pharmaceuticals going into North America. Now there was a very clear surge of front loading of pharma into North America. So before that deadline came in, tonnages were really double, triple digit growth week on week. And then when that deadline hit, then the following couple of weeks, it came down significantly. So we expect, depending on what the politicians say over the coming weeks and months, that corporate companies are going to make a decision on whether how high the risk is and whether they should be front loading or not. But it's probably a little bit too early now. I would say probably maybe in the mid of July or something, we'll have a bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, we have seen it like the iPhone shipment from India. All of a sudden, several charters were taking off in the month of May. Question to Oliver and John. Considering the disruptions witnessed in the first half of 2025, have there been any revisions of your 20-year global market forecast for freighters? Or do you believe these challenges are temporary and you will stick with the forecast that you have, and these problems will eventually stabilize?
So we believe these are temporarily, and I fully agree with John. We are into the long-term game. Our GMF is a 20-year long-term forecast. And as we have seen in previous crises with COVID and also with the financial crisis, we have always come back to the growth trend. 3 to 4%. Air cargo remains a growth industry, and that will stay like this, independent of the short-term effects we are seeing here.
John?
Yeah, agreed, 100%. We've this whole industry is used to this ride we're on, right? So long-term growth is key. We believe all the fundamentals remain in place for long-term growth, and so our forecast is unchanged. We're looking at, over the next 20 years, almost 3,000 new freighters entering the market. That's in all segments, and over 800 of those in the large wide-body space. So. Like I said, fundamentals are still there. We believe they'll remain long-term, and we'll be on this long-term growth path. As all of my colleagues here have mentioned, we're kind of looking at 4% growth year over year for the next 20.
Yanni, and this question to Yanni as well as to Nadim, current trends that you're observing in air freight demand, capacity adjustment, pricing, and fleet utilization, any specific insights, thoughts on some of these key topics?
I mean, as I said earlier on, there's clearly a shift of production or going back to traditional size of production. We also see repositioning of finished products into other countries to get back into the United States. We've observed some of that. And then you get your normal supply chain disruptions, which is the normal trend that certain shipments has to go. But there's for sure a shift from, I would say, minus China in a macro statement, that you do see those commodities are moving back to traditional locations, that especially in the high-tech side, we do see that for sure. And again, finished products are being repositioned from other countries, especially the high-value products.
Nadim?
Yeah, I would say, in terms of capacity, there's still year-on-year growth. So capacity is still being fully utilized, and I would say in some cases still there's shortage of capacity on certain trade lanes. Pricing, yes, because of redeployment of capacity, normal market dynamics have taken into effect, so yields are a little bit under pressure. But it's a good thing that fuel prices are at a more manageable level these weeks and months, thankfully. And I think when it comes to network, I think there's just a lot more agility in the network, a lot more route changes, a lot more schedule changes. And I would say in general, the commodities that we carry on the aircrafts, they're pretty much the same. That it really hasn't changed. Because again, like, from what we understand, speaking to, for instance, the likes of Apple, etc., uprooting production and shifting it from one country to another country, you're talking about 3 to 5 years minimum. These things don't happen overnight. There's all supply chain attached to it. So I think in the short term right now, nothing significant that we think, that would cause us concerns for the outlook of 2025. Challenges, yes. But again, I think we're well equipped, Amherst as well as the industry to deal with those challenges. And with challenges, also opportunities come to the table as well. And I think, a number of markets have come up as new destinations for and production companies, etc., which has opened up new trade lanes, and I think those are open. So once, let's say, we do go back to some sort of normalcy, then we have discovered new markets in the process, and those are to stay as well. So I think we're still very optimistic on the outlook.
These production shifts are part of manufacturing diversification, risk mitigation, supply chain diversification is part of that, part of the China plus X strategy of manufacturing spreading across different regions. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But for instance, from what we understand, speaking to, for instance, Apple, they probably have more than 10,000 suppliers in China that support production of their devices, and raw material is one. But actually, the expertise when it comes to manpower, that takes years, if not decades, to develop. So, building a factory is perhaps, the easiest part of it. But then building a supply chain around it to get the raw materials there efficiently is one. And then also having the manpower with the right skill set to produce those goods, that's the second. And that doesn't happen overnight.
Michael, as a representative of a global forwarding company, how crucial it is to maintain a controlled network, secure exclusive capacity, and establish a long-term partnership with shippers and carriers. And do you foresee such partnerships becoming more prevalent in the long run?
Partnerships, long-term partnerships, contracts are essential part of our air freight strategy. So we really believe in that. So our volumes, our customers, they need a setup which is reliable, and therefore we really work on long-term strategic partnerships with our carriers, but also on the other hand with shippers. And we see a trend that more and more shippers work closer with us to establish a certain product for example, high-tech industries, or even for the car automotive sector, where you really need special timing. And we are getting more and more closer together because there's still a huge demand for just-in-time, and we don't want to work on a short-term base, ad hoc base, just to have a quick win. We look on a long-term run, and we see that strategic partnership is essential, especially in all these uncertainties, that you can rely on a partner who will help you also in, let's say, tough markets where we are in the last 5-6 years. Yeah.
I was actually reading quite a recent report about a trend in the container shipping, manufacturing of the container vessels over the last 3-4 years. And when they looked at the numbers, they'd seen that there has been higher orders for smaller container vessels of 10,000 TEU instead of 20,000 TEU. One of the reasons attributed for that trend is there is a production diversification, particularly in the Southeast Asian market, and you do not have a port infrastructure to kind of berth some of these large ships. So they're using smaller vessels to feed into a large ship, which is berthed in a bigger port. My question to all of you, and I'll start with Oliver and then John, in terms of looking at the production diversification and risk mitigation in the global supply chains, how important are some of these trends in order for you to predict what is the market demands for narrow-body freighters, wide-body freighters, passenger to freighter converted freighters? Oliver?
So, well, we see the manufacturing shift as we just discussed out of China into several other Asian countries. But our forecast is more looking at a global scale. And while China is one of the biggest single manufacturing countries, and we look at it often separately, it is still part of Asia. And for cargo, it is not so important if it's coming from China into North America or Europe, or if it's from Korea or from Taiwan or any other Asian country. On top, all these major cargo hubs today are typically fed by belly airplanes, by short feeder flights. So wherever it's produced in Asia, it can still go through Chinese airports, or a lot of Chinese goods are going through other cargo hubs. So the big flows between the continents are not that much affected by these manufacturing changes, as long as it is in the region. There are obviously moves also to move factories into Africa, into Latin America, Mexico, or all these developments. But I think from our point of view, that's on a much smaller scale than what we see on a regional redistribution.
John, what is your reading?
Yeah, certainly agree. I mean, when we look at the growth of, with the production diversification, we see some of the final production, making of the final product, moving to Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, India. And at the end of the day, yes, those finished goods are still moving from Asia to North America. They're moving from Asia to Europe. And so that trade lane remains kind of very strong, right? And it doesn't change our overall forecast much when we think about the long haul need to get the products from the region into Europe and North America. But what we do see is, because we still have, as Nadim pointed out, components and raw materials and know-how that exists in China, we're seeing, and we believe we'll have continued growth in the more regional inter-Asia capacity. And so that will certainly provide growth and a need for more main deck freighters, maybe more narrow body main deck freighters, medium wide bodies, to feed that growth in the intra-Asia cargo.
Yanni, what is your sense of, or how optimistic are you about the future of main deck capacity of freighters?
I mean, Reggie, over time, it's proven yet over and over again that, main deck capacity is always a need. For sure, it is cyclical. For sure, it's very up and down. But, financial crisis, baby powder, COVID, e-commerce, there's always a demand for it. As Nadim said, there's flexibility and agility that counts today. And that's part of our game, what we do every day. And I see to the forecast, 3 to 4% growth, the demand, the supply, it will always be part of our lives, because when something goes wrong, you need a freighter. I mean, that's what it comes down to. The big driver is fuel, for sure. I mean, it's a big cost driver and everything, but there is always a demand and will be a demand for freighters.
But Nadim, a counter question is about if a lot of passengers are looking for an origin to destination without going through a hub, without going through a stopover, and if there are better planes coming, narrow-body planes coming in your XLRs, and the cargo capacity on the belly is going to be very, very minuscule. So does that offer an opportunity for main deck capacity?
Absolutely, yeah. If you look at, for instance, Emirates, we've got obviously two types of aircraft in our fleet, the 777 and the 380s. 380s are, of course, less cargo capacity. And over the years, as we slowly start, bringing in new aircrafts in, it's not going to be the size of the 380, and also cargo capacity-wise as well. So we are hence looking at further growth in our freighter capacity, and we will be adding more capacity. And I think that's fundamentally going to happen perhaps across our industry, not just at any particular airline or at any particular region. But at the same time, nobody knows really how much growth we're going to see on the passenger side. And those numbers are going to have a big impact on future aircraft. But if we look at the medium and short terms, let's say from 2025 to 2030, 31, I think Boeing obviously they stop production end of next year of the current 777 freighter. Then there's going to be a lapse for a few years till perhaps the new 777 freighters are going to be delivered. Airbus as well, maybe 2028, the first 350s coming off the plant. Even 27, okay, let's see.
I have a separate question on that, so let's.
So, and that today, of course, like the 747s are still bulk of our main deck freighter capacity around the globe, and they're on average 30 years plus old. We've got environmental challenges that we need to deal with as an industry. There are more and more stringent airport regulations coming in, especially in Europe. So I think freighters and main deck capacity is going to be in high demand. Equally, it's going to be scarce in the coming 4, 5, 6 years until a sizable number of wide-body new next generator freighters enter the industry. So capacity-wise, I think the freighters are going to be very, very important, and perhaps even more important in the coming 3 to 5 years.
Michael, what's the view from the forward? Because you operate, you have some of the dedicated capacity operated by some of the carriers.
At the end of the day, we need to move cargo from A to B, and there's always supply and demand. And looking into the last couple of years, or even behind, you see that the freighter always have a use case. Yeah? So we have a lot of customers which are requiring a real exact timing. You need special cargo. So freighter has always a place to be, and for us also the volumes in current markets, you will never be able to move them just only through belly. So there's always a reason that the freighter operation makes sense at the end of the day. For sure, if there's too much capacity, you always have this commercial topic, but in general, freighter and forwarding without freighter, I believe, will not be able.
Question to all of you in terms of what are the new cargo commodities coming on board? I was making a reference yesterday in one of the panel discussions. This is about, I watched a recent documentary on the ASML facility where they're building the latest EUV machines, which is the high-NA machine, which is 400 million. And they have a hyper-NA machine coming later, which is about like close to $1 billion. Takes about, I think, 7 or 8 747s to move different parts of that machine to different destinations. From what you see, what are the new cargo commodities coming? Semiconductor is going to be a significant portion of it. If you have any specific insights, information, and what you see.
That's the $1 million question, right? What's next? But certainly we've seen lots of growth in specialized commodities, right? So not sure I'm in a position as much as the operators to kind of predict what's coming next or what they're seeing trend-wise. But from our perspective, yeah, of course, we see the ASML, the need to continue to carry those, especially in a world that will be less and less dependent on 747s. Nadim, you mentioned as an aside, the kind of 747 has set the standard in the industry. We are almost at a point where we will have more 777 freighters in service than all of the 747s combined. So it's a really exciting time for the 777 to move into the leadership role in the industry. And so that, we see things like ASML, and we're working with the specialized commodities to make sure that our airplane's ready to carry those specialty commodities, and adding as much capability into the airplane as possible to make sure whatever comes next, we will be able to successfully carry.
Oliver?
Yes, absolutely. So single commodities for us are, we are not predicting that. We are listening to our customers, especially when we design a new product, to hear what is on their minds, what they are anticipating as much as possible, in order to take that into account. And ASML is a great example. A lot of airlines working with them. So we make sure that our new A350 freighter is able to carry these dedicated transport containers they are using on the plane. But then after that, it's a product that is around for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years life cycle. So nobody knows what's in 50 years and what commodity there is. So we are designing the most robust platform and flexible platform that enables our customers to be prepared for whatever is coming and whatever they see need to be air freighted around can be transported on these on the airplanes, and the 50F is fulfilling.
I think more than them, I think Michael, Nadeem, and Yanni, I think you are the people who are actually probably talking to potential customers who are another set of what is new for air freight. Michael, I'm sure that you would have been discussing with some of your key customers, looking at the possibilities. What is next in terms of air freight?
I believe, especially the customer was still named, yeah, but we see that also server racks and that there's a huge demand, and especially in the tariff discussion, there was a peak. Yeah, from one day to another, you try to fly out several freighters just of server racks to the US. And the semiconductor industry is essential also for us in our strategy, and that is also the reason why we deployed last year a special product, because we see that there's a huge demand. And but the special or the key point is that for such special product you also need not only the transportation, you also need an infrastructure, because you need temperature control, you need the visibility, the live tracking. So there are much more added values you need to add, and but it's from our point of view a very strategic aspect we need to take under consideration. Yeah.
Nadeem and Yanni, are you getting ready for that next wave of cargo commodities coming? You are strategically placed in UAE, that is becoming a global center of AI and data centers.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the things that is perhaps new and that we're hearing a lot and we're hearing from our customers, of course, the whole EV industry and the parts that they require that eventually will have to go through the air. Especially, the whole topic around batteries is extremely sensitive and something that we're very carefully as in this industry looking at. But that's probably one sizable new product that I envisage over the coming years will be more frequent on cargo airplanes. But then also, I think the current commodity that we've been carrying, I think they're going to change jackets, so to speak, get more fancier jackets, because the commodity might be the same, but they will need more visibility. You'll have Bluetooth trackers, you'll have X, Y, and Z kind of data requirements through the supply chain, and we as airlines need to adapt. The manufacturers will need to adapt with the ability to share data mid-flight, so that visibility for current products that we carry, that will require more up-to-date transparency, and that's something that apart from new products, the current products are going to become more demanding in terms of visibility and transparency. So these are probably the two things. And also pharmaceutical is very interesting. Of course, temperature-controlled environments and all of that has been around, but we see that there's a shift happening there in terms of new technology coming, new type of pharmaceuticals that require new type of handling capabilities. So I would say pharma and probably EV are probably two things that we're going to look out for in terms of what their requirements are going to be.
Yanni, pharma, EV, semiconductor, high-tech?
High-tech industrial infrastructure equipment for sure. I think technology is starting to integrate much bigger. If you look at the data mining machines, the cooling facilities. So for sure, I think that will continue to grow. Pharma will always grow for the demand. I mean, we all want to live longer. We all want to feel better. So self-care medication. I mean, there's a big push for COVID vaccines to be self-care rather than you go get vaccinated. All those kind of demands and technology-driven or advancement on the pharma side will continue to grow, which means in special handling, different types of markets. But I think, for sure, technology, infrastructure equipment will evolve quite a bit.
Yeah, pharma, I think personalized healthcare, cell and gene therapy, I think it's going to be like, I don't take a medicine for my cancer, which is also applicable for 10,000 others. It's going to be a medicine that is made for me. I think that's the kind of future that we are looking at. To that extent, I think all of us have a responsibility of creating solutions meant to deliver, move that cargo. Now is the billion-dollar question. I'll ask the carriers first and then come to the OEMs. Yanni, how many more freighters do you need?
You know, as we see at the market demand, you know, as we said, 3 to 4% supply and demand. So it's like every constraint has an opportunity. You know, as the opportunities comes, we will go and get more freighters. It's very much we've been growing quite steadily now, and if the opportunity rises and the demand's there, we will surely for sure explore it.
But you certainly need more freighters under your own AOC in Italy.
For sure. I mean, we need to grow a little bit. You know, we are 5 today and 2 more coming. So
2 more coming?
2 more coming. Correct.
This year, next year?
Boeing. So yeah, for sure. I mean, we all want to grow. We want to get to a level of state of offers. But if the demand's there, the constraints there, geopolitical and all these things, for sure, we still remain open for opportunities.
Nothing for Airbus? Okay.
27, 28, 29?
Nadeem, I know you have still a significant order to be delivered. I was reading an in-depth interview with the Boeing CEO quite recently, and in which there was one particular portion about completing I think about 77 777 freighters still on order, which is to be completed as per the ICAO rule as on 1st Jan 2028. He said that he's confident of Boeing making the deliveries as per the deadline. And I also see, I think you guys have been delivering the freighters much more frequently now. I've seen it, Emirates taking the delivery 2 in this year, and then Ethiopian had taken their last 777F. How optimistic are you about the deliveries of the remaining 777 and more freighters? It's been 1 year since I've been asking you what is Emirates' plan for the new production freighters.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. We've got 10 more 777 brand new freighters to be delivered next year by Boeing in the span of 6 months. You know, before, let's say, the metal wing production facility stops. In terms of delivery timelines, in all fairness, Boeing has been doing a pretty good job, and it's, you know, thankfully things are shifting towards the left instead of the right. So the recent deliveries that we got, they were 1 to 2 months earlier than what was initially anticipated. So we're seeing that that's heading in the right direction. In terms of future, I think there's still a few uncertainties that we're grappling with, both on the A350 freighter as well as the Dash 8F freighter. But we're anticipating, and we really are pushing to make a decision on that fairly quickly. Obviously, one of the key drivers for us as a combination airline is also our passenger fleet. And from now till 2030, we're inducting more than 100 wide-body passenger aircrafts additional into our fleet. So that capacity needs to be fed and defed. So you know, there's no doubt that Emirates will require more freighters, and we anticipate soon to make a decision on our next generation freighters. You know, which aircraft or which aircrafts, and the numbers. But you know, growth is still very much a requirement for Emirates.
Yeah, Emirates has fallen in love with A350. You have the passenger planes flying. So there is slightly probably you would probably look at the freighters as well. So we will wait for the announcement from Emirates. But I want to follow-up question on your passenger to freighter, the 777-300ER conversion, which was announced as the 10. Is there any update on that? Is that as per the plan?
Yeah, so we remain committed. We still have 10 aircraft earmarked in our passenger fleet that are going to be converted. As we all know, you know, the industry as a whole, we're waiting for the STC to be approved. You know, latest that we hear is now July or August, but no firm dates yet. But as and when you know, the STC is granted, then I would expect you know, slowly the conversion process will start, and you know, these freighters will come in. But there's also a little bit of still uncertainty about what that STC is actually going to allow you know, operators to do, the actual payload that is going to become available, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a couple of things that we remain uncertain about. But as we said earlier, in terms of incremental new freighters, it's going to be some years before meaningful additional freighter capacity comes, and hence these converted freighters are going to be you know, pretty important.
Michael, I don't know how much you can add value into it, but as you plan your future plans for Kuehne+Nagel, are there anything that worries you in terms of when you really need the capacity but not available? Is there something that's of concern for Kuehne+Nagel as a forwarder?
depend on the season, yeah. So I mean, Nadim and I had a meeting yesterday talking about new routings because of the deployment of all the new freighters. So we try to balance that, yeah, with that we have our asset light setup, but also on the other hand that we also go on the bellies and also on the freighters, sign part charters, full charters. At the end of the day, we try also to be in the market and look what the demand is, and so for us we are always happy to hear that there are investments, that there's still capacity, because the demand will always be, and therefore for us it's hard to predict that we would say no, we will get 5 or 6 more freighters, but for sure we also need to forecast and to get a good insight of our customers, what their outlook is, yeah, and we try to plan this together with them, and then there are projects, there are ideas, and at the end of the day, it depends on which region we are looking in, but for sure we also want always to grow, yeah.
Questions to both Oliver and John in terms of, we have seen there has been a crisis in the supply chain for aerospace for a pretty long time, and I think we are coming out of that. What are some of the realistic deadline for A350? I think, Oliver, it's been pretty clear that 2027 A350, and it will be significant progress in the A350 freighter. Any update from the A350 freighter program?
So for us at Airbus, it's pretty exciting times actually, because we are putting the 350 freighter together. We're building it. We have more and more larger components coming together. Just last week, we had a media post about the first wing set of 350 wings coming from the UK, being shipped to Germany for equipping. And we've joined the forward fuselage with the cockpit section. And eventually all this is, these big parts will be on the way to Toulouse. We're also very happy in terms of supply chain that we have received all the critical parts that we need to build the 2 prototype airplanes, which will secure our certification timeline. And then we'll start final assembly over summer. First flight next year, and entry into service certification in 2027.
John, 777-8F, what is the realistic timeline for that? And as the supply chain crisis, is that really easing out at Boeing factories?
Yeah, 2028 for entry into service. So, you know, a lot of the milestones that Oliver mentioned, we're beginning to see for the build of the first 777-8F as well. So we've produced in our composite wing factory in Everett. We've produced major composite structure for the first set of wings for the first 777-8F. These are some of the biggest composite structures in the world. So it's a really exciting time to see the airplane transition from a design phase to production and then into first flight and test. Our supply chain's on board with the 8F. We have suppliers producing parts already on the airplane. And, you know, like I said, the design phase of the airplane is virtually complete. We're over 95% done on the structural design, 80% done airplane wide. And, you know, 2025 is a really exciting time for the industry for both of our programs. We'll also see first flight in 2026. And, you know, that'll be required to get into the flight test phase and the certification effort that'll lead to a entry into service in 2028. It's an exciting time. So we'll see. It'll be a race to see who enters service first.
Okay, we are looking forward those deadlines, and we will watch very carefully on when they be available for service, getting into the entry into service. Last question to all of you before I open up to the audience. Any thoughts on the 777-300ER and LR conversion, passenger to freighter conversions? There are three programs that are underway. Anyone looking at that? You know, Emirates is already looking at that. What are you looking at what is your evaluation of the wide body passenger to freighter conversion and the extraordinary delay that we see in some of them really getting the STCs?
I think the converted freighters are a necessity, and it's simple economics at the end of the day. If you look today at some of the standalone freighter operators that we have around the world, a number of them are privately held companies. Some of them are not. But obviously, financing is a big part. A brand new freighter, anything north of $200 million, a converted freighter is a lot cheaper. And so for a lot of companies and current operators that are flying the 747s, converted 400, production 400s, they need to replace those aircrafts. And for them, a brand new freighter is maybe a stretch too far in terms of finances. And then, the only real alternative is conversion. And whether it's the 300 conversion or the 200 LR conversion, there's going to be demand for both. But obviously, feedstock is very different. Yep. There are about, I think, 800, north of 800 777-300 ERs, and there are only about 60-something 200 LRs in the world. So the 300 ERs are going to be the bulk of the freighter conversions, no doubt, and there's going to be customers and demand for that aircraft, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, economies of scale works on it. If it works the price and what you need, then it goes. And also availability. I mean, everybody's looking for equipment now. So if the unit price of a second hand is too much, then you have to play it off. But to Nabeem said, it's just economies that works for what you need. But for sure, it will be a strong player.
You're open to considering P2Fs?
We're looking at everything.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand what exactly is the reason of the inordinate delay in the certification process. We have the KMC, we have the Mammoth, we have the IAIs. Anybody has any thoughts as to why there is so much of delay? It's just the FAA just refused to certify the STC?
You're looking at me. No, I think they probably have, all three probably have representatives here. That would be a better conversation for them. I mean, we're talking about 777 conversions, so the natural interest is to ask Boeing, but at the end of the day, it's a third-party conversion, right? So I have nothing to add on the certification front, just because I don't know. It's not our product. But certainly from an operational perspective, they are necessary, right? And fortunately for the industry, the 777 is a 777, right? So the airplanes share that same big fuselage cross-section, so the cargo commonality is in place, the GSE commonality is in place, the pilot commonality is in place. So when you think about fleets today of 777Fs, maybe some conversions in there in the near and medium term, and then a future to an 8F, there's a lot of commonality on that path. So certainly an important part of the industry for the next decade or so.
Reji, I think honestly, if you look at all the recent incidents in the world, every certification authority will double check, triple check, which is in all our benefit. So if it takes a bit longer, fair. So I think it's just overall, as the industry has grown and the FAA was quite a lot under scrutiny, high-profile events, for sure they will make sure now before they sign off. Same you and me. If you need to double check, you triple check. So I think just from a macro statement, it's just overall compliance to security and the certification process is just more being ramped up to make sure it's correctly done.
Questions from the audience?
If we have growth and we have infrastructure constraint, why is it that the small airports, at least in the US, that used to have freighters are declining? And is it just a market downturn, or is it a structural change away from a business strategy of going to alternative gateways?
So I believe it's just a downtrend because such airports, as you mentioned, are essentially, I mean, we still operate into such an airport for the time being because of a short turnover time, because of quick handling, and looking into the COVID years, all the major airports have been heavily disrupted. So smaller airports will always play a key role, but only for tailor-made solutions. I believe for the mass industry, but I guess for the automotive sector, there are some certain airports where it makes sense to go in, and also in certain destinations because of the pharma infrastructure and all the stuff around. So I guess they are essential, but always in combination with a customer where you need to deploy a special setup.
One question out of curiosity. Lately, we see progressing trend of taking care of our environment, so also carbon footprint. Do you think that there will be trend in the future to try to go out of the air cargo due to the carbon footprint? Or how do you think that this trend will impact the industry in its own? Just a curiosity.
I think we can give you one clear example. For instance, here in Europe, you see the Eastern European airports, the likes of Budapest, Prague, etc. They're seeing a lot more air cargo coming from the Far East. Now, the destination of that cargo hasn't really changed, but people are choosing to fly towards the east of Europe and then truck it from there as compared to flying it all the way through the end. That's one clear example where the customers as well as the airlines are making these decisions. But also, apart from the flying bit, when it comes to air cargo, reuse of recyclable materials and buildup of cargo, SAF, of course, is becoming more and more dominant. So I think as an industry, and I think all of us here around the table, I think everybody has that as a key factor in our day-to-day business decision-making process, and especially people, and i.e. the forwarders, our customers, they're making it a key part of their commercial ask towards the airlines, towards the airports. It's not just per se about your pricing; it is also about your environmental policy and all what comes with it. So absolutely, it's a key focus, and it will remain a key focus. And I think collectively, we're all heading in the right direction when we see where we were maybe 5 years ago and where we are today.
Also for us as forwarder, it's essential. Some weeks ago, we just announced a cooperation with our airline partner in regards of SAF, and also in talking about airports for us, it is also a key factor. Is there a supply of SAF? Is there the possibility to deploy such a product also in other airports? So in general, we really look forward that it gets more and more important, and it's a key factor for us as from forwarding side.
We also do see there's a lesser demand for the old 747s, especially when it's the older models because of the burn. So we do see a shift. The customers say they just want the newer models or a 777. So we do see that shift coming quite prominently forward.
I also think we should put air cargo in perspective. I mean, the shipper is using air cargo for a good reason. And if he wants to pay less or maybe be more environmentally friendly, he can go use a container ship or other transport means. Air cargo is expensive, but it's required because it has speed, and there's a good reason to use the speed. Shippers decide which way they want to transport the goods, and they have other options. Okay, but some air cargo has to be used for, especially for crisis situations. Think about COVID and all the medicines, for example. What would have the world done without air cargo?
Yeah, certainly agree with all the thoughts that have been shared here, and certainly it's a focus, right? When we think about how to reduce the carbon footprint of the industry as quickly as possible, it's renewing fleets, right? Replacing those older 747s with newer generation airplanes. That's the fastest way to get 15 to 40% carbon emissions out of the industry. SAF will certainly play a huge part in that. We need to see production of SAF continue to increase, but we are seeing that. SAF is predicted to almost double in its production here in 2025, and so I think the whole industry is really excited about that. But for the design of the airplanes, it's certainly a major focus. I mean, profitability, fuel efficiency is certainly important, but emissions are very important as well and are a major factor in the design. We hear a lot about carbon emissions, and that's tied to the fuel efficiency. But things like NOx are becoming more and more important, especially for local communities. The NOx has a more local effect on communities. And we're beginning to see even NOx charging, especially here in Europe at the airports. And so Our partner on the 777-8F is General Electric on the engine, the GE9X. And NOx was a huge focus when we when GE designed the engine, we designed the airframe to come together, and their focus in their combustion chamber has resulted in NOx emissions that are literally half of anything else in the large wide body space.
Final comments, future of freight and freighters.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for the industry, right? As everyone mentioned here, there's huge demand in the industry, and so there's new commodities, there's changes in the way the trade is flowing. And we have 2 new large wide-body freighters currently in development. So keep an eye on the space this year, next year, and we'll see a lot of exciting milestones.
Oliver?
Yes, on our side, so we are really excited to see the 350 freighter coming together with us for the first time, having a product in the large freighter market, and that really complementing our other product setup in the small freighter market with the P2F 320-21, and in the mid-size market with the 30 P2Fs. So we have a complete product family now that is all fly-by-wire and benefits from the same savings that we have seen on the passenger market for more than 20 years.
Michael?
We are always excited, especially air freight, since COVID is, let's say, very fancy, also in the private life. If you talk to someone, everybody's now familiar with air freight because we transported all the masks and the COVID, and therefore really excited. And I guess hearing such positive statements like investments into freighters and new freighters, so also really excited to see the new A350 freighter. So great.
Nadeem?
I think we're equally excited, positive. I think over the last few months, nobody can say air cargo is boring. I think we've got more excitement than perhaps sometimes we can handle. But yeah, I think we remain optimistic, and a lot of good things happening. New aircraft being built, new markets being discovered, new products coming online. So I think it's a good time to be there. And also, on the manpower side as well, like as you mentioned, air cargo is becoming more and more sort of visible in our day-to-day lives. And for instance, one example is that the number of applicants we get from universities who want to do a thesis on air cargo is exponentially. It's like dozens every month. Requests of students want to do research, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's all positive. Hopefully we'll also discover new talent. We will collectively invest in new talent, because all of that is, of course, a key requirement as we grow when it comes to airplanes, network, everything else. We also need the talent pool, to keep up with the growth.
Yeah, any final word to you?
Yeah, same. I think one thing COVID and the rest has taught us to build partnerships, and I think that's one core thing. Intimacy with your customer, understanding the solution. But equally, every challenge is an opportunity. So we are very optimistic of what's coming. For sure, it will be busy. Lives will get new challenges every day. But, as you keep talking to your customer, you talk to your partners, and you look forward. So very positive.
Air cargo is never boring, so if anyone thinks that air cargo is boring, please, you need to talk to all of people on stage, and there are quite a lot of people around. And if you're looking for a good opportunity, good career opportunities, please consider air cargo. I started writing about global supply chains and air cargo since November 2013, when I knew nothing about air freight and the freight industry. And I think if anyone in the audience wants to be a journalist, reporter covering global supply chain, I think this is the best time to start your career. So please be prepared. I like to thank my panel members. It's been a fascinating 1 hour of discussion. I like to thank all of you. Put your hands together for the great panel speakers that we had. Thank you so much.